Good morning. Today is the 27th day of Elul, and we're almost at the very end of the year. And because we're reading Parashat Ha'azinu twice, then we will dedicate the last 3 days of the year to speak about Rosh Hashanah and the upcoming holidays in general. So, what is exactly Rosh Hashanah? Why is it the Rosh Hashanah in the first place? Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year, and you probably know that there's more than one head of the year in Judaism. It's the same thing as people today have two heads of the year at least. You have Rosh Hashanah, which is usually sometime in the autumn, or if you're in Israel, then late summer. And there's another head of the year that many people note, especially if you work in any kind of secular office. So then you have the 1st of January, which is also. So the same thing existed for many generations, and the Mishnah tells us that there are 4 heads of a year. There's different dates that are reckoned to be the beginning of a year for different reasons. So for instance, we're probably mostly familiar with Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of Shvat, about which there's a dispute whether it's on the 15th day or the first day, and that is considered to be the beginning of the year for the cycle of trees. And this has to do with when we count that the tree has 3 years, and from when we can start eating its fruit, and so on. So we have different heads of years for different reasons. And in the Torah, it doesn't mention the head of the year. All it says, well, it says a few things, but let me read you the verses. We're looking at Numbers 29:1. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a sacred occasion, meaning a Mikra Kodesh. You shall not work at your occupations, meaning you shall do no work. You shall observe it as a day of Truah. And Truah literally means to blow a something. And for various reasons, the sages learned from this, based on their understanding of Torah, that this was referring to a shofar and not to a trumpet. It's important to know that in the temple, when they blew the shofar, there were also trumpets. They didn't just blow the shofar by itself. And we can't get now into the whole discussion there. It's in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. There's a whole description of how they used to blow. Outside of the temple, we only blow with the shofar. We only use the shofar. Now, I know that this is it's always a gap. It's always a leap. But Rosh Hashanah is seen as the first day of mankind. It's the day of mankind's creation, the day on which Adam was created. On the other hand, there's no mention of this, and there's no easy way to calculate it. The calculation is based on, we mentioned this week, that there are 2 opinions about which describe when the world was created. Was it created in Nisan, or was it created in Tishrei? And we follow the opinion that says that it was physically created in Tishrei, and in thought it was planned on Nisan. Now, since God is not exactly working and has to working at an architectural office and has to have papers signed and send them to the municipality to see if it's okay. So obviously this is not talking about time passing in the usual sense. It's not 6 months passed between when you made the plans until you got the approval and so on. So it's talking about a different idea, and the idea is that the month of Nisan, which is spring, is more connected to thought, to theory, and Tishrei is more connected to action. And that's actually surprising, because usually we say that the months of the summer are the time of action, and the months of the winter, which follow Tishrei, so they're the months of contemplation. It's much easier to be indoors and contemplate rather than be outdoors and doing something. So there's a lot to think about here. Why it was set up this way. But the sages give room for both ideas, meaning they're saying we find that there is a tradition that says that the world was created in Nisan. Again, not necessarily picking a date, but more talking about an idea that spring reflects the creation, and there is a similar idea. Again, these are two opinions in the Talmud, and they give voice to these two opinions. Usually they say that this was the difference between Babylon and Egypt. But it doesn't really matter if this was the origin or the origin was elsewhere. It doesn't really matter. The point is that the other opinion is that the beginning of life, the beginning of the world, is actually in Tishrei, as we enter the winter months. What is at the core of this debate? And why do we, in the end, choose Tishrei and not Nisan? Again, there's very good grounds to come and say that the world was created in Nisan. And again, the first of Nisan is one of the heads of the year. We actually call it one of the heads of the year. So the way this is explained in Hasidic thinking is that Nisan is connected to newness, freshness, something that's completely new, off the shelf. But Tishrei is more about what we call renewal, or the word that's used is to strengthen yourself. And what's the idea? The question is, what is the origin of our world? What is it based on? Is our world based on the notion that we should be searching for something new all the time? Should we be looking for the foundation stone of our lives, of the world itself, to be new? In other words, what if I have a laundry machine, a washing machine that doesn't work? So is the solution to buy a new one, just start over? Or is the solution to try to fix it, to try to rectify it? And both opinions have a lot of credit to them. You can't just discount one of them. There are people that when they face difficulty, I'm probably one of them, but it's much easier for them to just, pack up and leave and start somewhere else. Much easier. Let me go somewhere else, I'll redo the whole thing. I need the feeling that I have a clean slate. I have a feeling that I'm starting anew. But there are people, especially the people that we send to fix our washing machines and everything else that we try to fix in the world, who have a different sense about the world. And they're actually energized when there's a situation in which something needs to be fixed. And they say, why throw out the old? You can fix it. They have a completely different picture of what reality is. So they both have credit. It's not that one of them is right and one of them is wrong. However, in the end, even though the sages say both of these are true, they're both the beginnings of a year, when we talk about our relationship with God, we choose Tishrei. We choose the sense of strengthening and fixing and rectifying. Why is that so? Because it could be that when we're just thinking about ourselves, we just need a new beginning. We need something new. But God represents eternity. And when you're faced with eternity, saying, well, I'll just start over again, is not going to work so well. Because God is both, when I say eternity, I mean that He is past, present, and future. And so there's no real running away from what doesn't work. You can't really just brush it under or like hop a plane and travel 5,000 miles and start your life in a different place. Because it's still God, He's still there. Wherever you go, whatever you do, it's still the same God. God gives continuity to reality. So from that point of view, when we look at our relationship with God, we have to choose the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year that represents rectification. The beginning of the year that doesn't run away from the past, but rather comes and says, I have an opportunity to fix the past. I have an opportunity to change the past. And that's why the mitzvah of tshuva, the commandment of tshuva, suddenly comes in. Only God can give tshuva. He's the only one who can give this return to Him that surmounts all the obstacles, but it's only on condition that you're willing to face the obstacles. I want to finish this with a very beautiful idea that was stated in Chassidus, but I originally read it in Rav Kook, so I'll attribute it to him. I only saw it later in Chassidic thinking, that God can really carry everything. When we say carry, we mean suffer. We mean suffer our iniquities, our transgressions, our mistakes. In fact, the world is a pretty dismal place when you think about how many things go wrong all the time. Not just because they go wrong sporadically, but because people do the wrong thing. And yet God continues to sustain the world. He can sustain it all. It's not like He's waiting for the perfect moment when everything's in place, and that'll be that'll be the big celebration. It doesn't matter. Really, He can sustain it all. The problem is, can we? The question is always focused on us. Are we able to carry our past? Are we able to make peace with our past? Are we able to fix it? And so on. So it says Rav Kook that the first stage in any kind of teshuvah, any kind of return to godliness, to return to eternity, the return to goodness, and so on, is to take responsibility for everything that I've done. Now, I can't really carry everything that I've done. I've done so much wrong that I don't have any room on my shoulders to really carry that burden. But God is not asking us to carry that burden. What He's asking us is to turn to Him. In other words, what does this mean? That you have to take responsibility for everything that you've done. That's called vidui, that's called confession. That I come and say to Hashem, Chatati aviti upashati. I sinned and I transgressed and I did things that were wrong on purpose. And I want you to forgive me. If I'm willing to say, I did this, I am the one who is responsible, there is no one else to blame for my condition except for me, then God is willing to carry the burden for me. He's willing to lift me up and carry me through a place where I can't by myself because I don't have enough strength for that. So a lot of people they skip over the first stage of understanding that if I'm still blaming anyone, my parents, my spouse, my children, my neighbors, whoever it is, for my predicament in life, then I haven't yet made the first step. But once I make the first step, then God easily carries everything, just like He carries the entire world. It just needs that first step of taking the responsibility, not trying to place it somewhere else, not trying to get rid of it, accepting it. This is my life. I'm the one who made it the way it is. And the moment that I'm willing to admit that, confess that, then God steps in and He's able to carry it. So what we saw here was that Rosh Hashanah has to be in the autumn, because the autumn is the time of fixing things. It's not a time of starting afresh. It's not a time of starting anew. Returning to God means coming to terms with the past, accepting the burden of the past, but knowing full well that as human beings we can't carry it all. And so therefore that is where our connection with the infinite takes over. But that really the time of year to do that is now, in the autumn. Once we've finished all our work and we look back at it in agricultural times or in places, you look back at what you sowed and you look at what's grown and you see all the mistakes that you made, and you bought the wrong type of seed, and you did this, and you didn't water it enough, and you have all the mistakes in the world to think about. And then you try to fix it. And then you try to repair what can be repaired, preparing also for the future, trying to lift up whatever can be lifted up. So the perfect time of year for this is autumn, because this is what defines the essential characteristic of having a relationship with eternity, having a relationship with God. That I'm here always to fix things. That is my purpose. I'm not here to just start anew and start afresh and forget about everything. There's another thing that I want to finish with. I understand it's a little bit longer than the usual, but bear with me for one more minute. There's a simple idea presented in the sages that there's no way to say that ours is the first world that was created. So say the sages there were many, many worlds created earlier. And then God did not like them. They did not find favor in his eyes. Finally, he created our world, this reality. The souls, I guess, tried to live in all these worlds and it just didn't work out. And finally, he created this world, and this world found favor in his eyes. And the question is, how is this world different than any other possible world? What is different about this world, this reality that we live in? The answer is actually in the question. The description was that he created worlds and he didn't like them, so he discarded them. Finally, there was one world that he didn't discard. He liked it. The reason he liked it is because this world, this reality, did not break down and fall apart because it saw the fate of all the previous realities that have been created. The previous realities were created and then discarded. And so, clearly, after a few of these happened, the next reality looked back and said, well, all of them have been discarded. It's probably going to be my fate in the end also. This reality was the first reality that was not pessimistic. That did not, it had this disclaimer, past events are not a reflection of future events. It doesn't mean that because this is what happened until now is what it has to happen from now on. This reality had optimism. This reality had a vision, a horizon. And that's the reality into which we are created. That's the reality into which we are born in this world. A reality that studied fate and said, fate is not a verdict. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be different. And the reason it's going to be different is because I'm optimistic. The reason it's going to change is because I believe in change. The reason it's going to get better is because I believe in the good. I believe in the eternal goodness of God, and I believe in that as something that can come and shift and change reality, our reality, the very reality that we live in. And the best time of year again for that is now, when we're looking back at everything that we did in the summer and we see all our mistakes, and we say the coming year will be different. As we say at the end of, as it's customary to say during these days, may this year and its curses end, and may the new year and its blessings begin.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?